You've seen the best, and now it's time to talk about the worst movies of 2021. Again, I didn't get to watch all the movies that came out, so there's a good chance that a lot of them might not be on this list. Consider yourselves lucky. So, let's get this top 10 list started. Black Widow. Black Widow is a movie that people have wanted a standalone movie of for years, and nearly 10 years later, they finally gave us one, and it was so mediocre and just thrown together. And when it was all said and done, the movie wasn't even about Black Widow, it was about setting up her family for future spin-offs. And Yelena was actually the worst part of Hawkeye, a show that I really liked, and she ended up separating Clint and Kate in the final battle against Kingpin. The movie just stinks of being too little too late, and Taskmaster just stinked. They also decided to release the movie right after Black Widow died in Avengers Endgame, so this story immediately felt dated, redundant, and like an attempt at squeezing the remaining amount of money that they could from Scarlett Johansson. Empowering, isn't it? The first Wonder Woman still seems to be the female superhero movie to beat. Mortal Kombat Battle of the Realms. The first movie, Scorpion's Revenge, was so great, and this one was so disappointing. Watch my review to know how. It had a couple of good action scenes, but even they were tainted by the lackluster storytelling and character development. Wrong Turn, the remake. The movie is not terrible on its own, but when it manipulatively takes and uses the name of the original movie to trick people into the theatre, only to then have it really be a Wicker Man knockoff, that is just bad no matter how you cut it. And it's especially bad when the main horror scene in the woods is a copy and paste of the horror scene in Ed, Edd and Eddy. Mortal Kombat. A rated R Mortal Kombat movie, and still they messed it up. They introduced a new character that no one asked for and made him the main character. The movie made poor use of its hour and 50-minute runtime, and you can tell that it was heavily edited so it could play more times in theaters. And for an R-rated movie, it was nowhere near as violent as it should have been. I have seen much more violent fight scenes in Netflix's The Night Comes For Us. Hopefully the next movie will be better. They should just stick to the tournament and look at the Scorpion's Revenge animated movie to see how a good Mortal Kombat movie is done. Cop Shop. After all of the positive reviews this movie was getting from reviewers, and then when I read what kind of movie this was, I thought there was no way I would not like this film. But in the end, I did not like this film. Gerard Butler and Frank Grillo were great in the movie, but I just didn't warm up to the main character, and I thought a lot of the other characters were so dumb, and the film felt overly long given its concept. The movie needed another rewrite in my opinion, and it needed to be tighter in its execution, and despite the nice cinematography and a couple of cool scenes, I was very disappointed by this movie, which is a real shame as I love movies with this kind of concept, but it really didn't do anything for me, and I have seen much better films of its genre. But it was very well shot, and the colors and cinematography were very cinematic. I just didn't care for the overall execution. Alright, now it's time for the top 5. Number 5. Snake Eyes. I was contemplating whether or not I should put this in first place as the worst movie of the year because this movie was so bad that I actually turned it off 17 minutes in, a feat that only a truly terrible movie could pull off. But then I thought, I shouldn't judge a movie that harshly unless I've seen the whole thing. So in the end, I thought I'd put the movie in 5th place instead of 1st. So, what was so bad about this movie that I had to turn it off after 17 minutes? Well, that's all down to 2 words: shaky cam. Now, I don't mind shaky cam as much as other people. I don't prefer it as a filmmaking choice, but I can usually make out what's going on in a scene that has heavy amounts of shaky cam. But this film broke me, because not only was there too much shaky cam during the action scenes, but the camera would shake in every other scene. It would shake in the opening, it would shake when a couple of characters are talking, and it happened so much in the first 17 minutes that it was actually hurting my eyes. Which is a shame, because I realized that the film was doing something good. At the beginning at least, it was less of a G.I. Joe movie and more of a gangster movie, both with its tone and presentation style, kind of like The Raid. But there's one problem. Other gangster movies are rated R and have lots of violence. This movie is rated PG-13 and therefore cannot be a true gangster movie, which is fine for younger audiences, but then there's me. Why should I bother watching a skimmed-down gangster movie when I could just watch a better gangster movie like The Raid 2 or The Night Comes For Us, both of which have amazing fight choreography, insane amounts of violence and gangster activity, and they don't have any shaky cam that hurts my eyes. So there's literally no reason for me to watch this. So right around the 17-minute mark, when the bloody camera was shaking during a scene where a few characters were talking, I couldn't take it anymore and I just turned the movie off. And no movie can break me that easily. So yeah, right at that moment, this this film instantly had a place in my worst movies list. And it's absolutely unforgivable that they have Iko Uwais in this movie, the very man who has been in some of the best shot action movies ever, the same movies that embarrassed Hollywood and showed them how action scenes should be done, and despite hiring the man himself, they still went back to using their old crappy shaky cam methods of filming action. Disgraceful. Don't bother watching this. Watch any of the other R-rated gangster movies that are not watered down Hollywood cash grabs. Number 4. F9, the Fast Saga. I am a huge fan of the Fast and Furious franchise. Well, from the 5th movie onwards. They know what they are, and they very creatively top themselves with all the crazy stunts and action sequences, which is why I was very disappointed with Fast 9. The movie just didn't have the charm or even the great editing that the previous movies had, and this is the first movie where the over-the-top nature of the series really did just annoy me, mainly because they retcon the 6th movie and very clumsily bring Han back, even though his death was so unbelievably memorable and worked so well for the story. And the only reason they did this is because they now want Jason Statham to be a good guy, and they know they can't fully do that whilst he killed a member of the Toretto crew. Oh, I'm sorry, the Toretto family. And well, by bringing him back, that means that he technically didn't kill a member of their crew. The action set pieces are here, but they don't feel as inspired or fun as they were in the previous movies, and I feel like that's down to the lackluster writing with the terrible story and subpar character motivations, and the fact that they topped themselves, but they didn't smartly top themselves. And that's something that I really appreciated about the Fast and Furious movies. People say they just got dumber and dumber, but there was an intelligence to their stupidity. With Fast 9, there was no intelligence. It was just stupidity. And that made me lose interest in this movie long before it ended. And I was just waiting for it to be over. And that's why it makes me sad to say that Fast 9 is one of the worst and most disappointing movies of 2021. Number 3. Matrix Resurrections. Yeah, I was one of the chumps that thought this movie actually looked good going by the trailers.
Am I crazy?
Now, this movie was going to be in 4th place on this list, but there's a reason I bumped it up to number 3, and I'll tell you why in a bit. Basically, this movie has the worst story of all the Matrix movies, and even the worst action, which is absolutely shocking as the Matrix is known for having great action sequences. Every movie reviewer will always reference Matrix at one time or another when they talk about great action scenes in movies, and for a series with that kind of clout to come out with something like this is just embarrassing. And how do you get Keanu Reeves in the movie and not have him do much fighting and do absolutely no gunplay? He spends most of the movie using his force powers. This is also the first of the Matrix movies to have absolutely no tension and have none of its characters die. This movie is honestly the last straw. The Wachowskis really are bad filmmakers. They always have some cool visuals going on with regards to colors and cinematography, as is the case with this movie, but when it comes to good storytelling, they just don't seem to know what they're doing. And with one Wachowski directing this movie, I was holding out hope that maybe the film would be more focused, but it ended up being worse. They even have a new actor playing the role of Agent Smith, and they should not have recast his role because this new guy doesn't hold a candle to Hugo Weaving's iconic performance. And apparently, Hugo Weaving wanted to come back, but he had a scheduling conflict, and they didn't bother to wait for him. They just recast the role and filmed the movie without him. They didn't even bother to ask Lawrence Fishburne back either, and he also really wanted to do it. But nope. Honestly, if the Wachowskis didn't want to make another Matrix movie, then they shouldn't have made another one. Or they should have at least let someone else make it. Someone who really wanted to make a Matrix movie and had a lot of great ideas. And maybe they could consult on the movie just so it could fit within the continuity and the timeline. But instead, they just made the same movie they made before, but way worse. The movie is still up its own ass with regards to asking us what is the Matrix, when I feel like the last 3 films already told us the answer. So why are we still being asked the same question? The movie also has no story or real end goal. The only real mission in this movie was that Neo wanted to go and save Trinity. And that's it. Let the 2-hour and 30-minute runtime commence. And I really felt that length. Now, the reason this movie was going to be number 4 on this list, but ended up getting bumped up to number 3, is because the John Wick sequels have been massively delayed because of this film. Keanu Reeves had to film this movie, and it took time away from him working on John Wick 4 and 5, which are meant to be 2-parters. And now, the next John Wick movie is coming out in 2023.
Son of a bitch!
Bottom line, this is a sequel that nobody wanted except for the studio, and hopefully they will stop asking for a sequel after this, as it is not performing well in theaters. And this movie had the nerve to hint at more sequels. Warner Brothers may have forced it, but I expected better from the Wachowskis. I am not looking forward to another one of their movies ever again. Number 2. Home Sweet Home Alone. I just recently made a whole versus video on this film, so I'll make this quick. This was a nonsensical cash grab made by Disney. It was a sequel, but acted like a remake by recreating entire scenes from the original movie, and it ended up being as bad as you expected and somehow even worse. I'm sure these actors are very talented, but they are being directed as if they are in an SNL sketch. Me and my brother had to pause the movie so many times I lost count. That's how bad it was. Don't bother watching this movie. I've done it so you don't have to. You guys just remember the good Home Alone movies and stay away from this horrible dumpster fire. Now I know that most of you were thinking that Home Sweet Home Alone would be number 1 on this list, but no. There was one movie that I did not have high expectations for, but if the studio had actually put some effort into it, then it could have been something truly special. And the number 1 worst movie of 2021 is Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Home Sweet Home Alone was a terrible movie, but let's be honest, who had any expectations for that? It was a one and done, twice. No one had any expectations for it. Venom Let There Be Carnage, on the other hand, the movie had so much potential to be something great. But instead, it is one of the biggest disappointments that I've had for a movie. And I didn't even have any expectations for this one because I knew it was going to be treated as a cash grab by Sony, and it still disappointed me. There are people who like this movie, and that's fine. Like what you like. It doesn't say anything bad about you. But yeah, when I heard there was going to be a Venom movie with Carnage in it, I expected so much better than what we got. And it's ironic that this movie has a much more violent character, and yet it still wasn't as violent as the first movie. The tone was all over the place, the dialogue was terrible, the movie was mandated a tiddly hour and 30-minute runtime, and the movie spent most of that time wasting time. This is by far my most disappointing movie of the year. So much so that when I was coming up with this list, I forgot about it. That's how bad and unmemorable the movie is. And what hurts is that the cast and director for this movie are very talented. The only people I blame for this mess is Sony. This could have been their Logan, and they turned it into a joke in their half-assed attempt at trying to make it an MCU movie. If you liked it, great, but this is a movie that could have been Joker combined with elements of The Dark Knight, but it just ended up being Sony's rip-off MCU movie. So, that's my top 10 worst movies list of 2021. Originally I was going to do 5, but then I thought I would surprise you with 10. And boy, it was so easy to fill this list. If I did a top 11 worst, then Shang-Chi would have made this list too. Be sure to click the subscribe button if you haven't already, and feel free to follow me on Instagram and TikTok. I will have links to both of those in the video description. And be sure to donate $1 to me on Patreon, as I have extra content coming up that will be exclusive to patrons. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help, and be sure to share this video as well with everyone you know. And be sure to let me know what your top 10 lists of 2021 are in the comments below. Thanks very much for your continued support, guys. I really do appreciate it. And thanks as always for watching, and I will see all of you next time. Take care.